Welcome to the Alternative Football panel. I am XFL Mike G, and it's good to be back. With us today are our host in the background. You can't see him, our producer, Rick 8-Bit, Royce Waxenfelter, a.k.a. Viking Wax Press, John, a.k.a. Run 68 Bone. How's it going, guys?
Doing good.
Doing great.
All right, I'm super excited about this episode. This episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to bring in some of our audience members who may not have watched us since the UFL season ended, I should say, and the starting of the indoor and European football leagues that John and Royce have been covering. I just want to talk real briefly about the Alternative Football panel and what we do. We're 8 fans from across the country with different experiences and different opinions on things. But we try to give you the best information, give you the details with a very little opinion. Now, we do have opinions, and we'll feel free to express those opinions, but we want to give you more facts than we don't want to be one of those podcasts where everybody's just screaming at each other. As the indoor season and the European football season start to wind down, we'll cover more content about the UFL and these other alternative football leagues, as you can see. And tomorrow night, we have a very special event. Rick 8-Bit, our producer, will be having a throwback conversation to the year 2001, covering WWF and XFL. So that should be a very entertaining episode, guys. That's tomorrow night, same time. Anywhere you see this podcast right now, you'll be able to watch that show. So I wanted to throw it to Royce and John. So we're going to start covering the indoor leagues and the European leagues before we jump into the latest news on the UFL. Royce, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm actually going to have John kind of cover most of the other leagues, and then I'm going to kind of wrap up some of these alt leagues with some CFL standings. So, John, if you would like to kind of cover what's been going on in some of the indoor and European leagues, that'd be great.
Sure thing. So it was a great weekend of football across the planet, all right? In Europe, they had a lot of good stuff. So we'll start off with the American Football League of Europe, the AFLE, and then there's the EFA, and then there's the TAL, the Arena League, and the AF1. All of them are doing really good. So the AF1, as you can see on the screen here, everyone, it had its semifinals, and it had 2 great games. They're high-scoring games. You can see the game from Sunday between the Michigan Arsenal and the Nashville Cats was 92-76. That's like a basketball score. That's an NBA score right there. It was really entertaining. Nashville is the real deal. They come out, they play great. They've only got 1 loss. They're a really good team, and they're getting to host the championship game this upcoming weekend on the 8th on Saturday. And the Firebirds are the defending champs, who've been a little bit of a rough spot. They've lost 3 of their games the last couple of weeks. They rebounded to beat the Minnesota Monsters. So I thought it was a really good game. If you want, there was some drama in the Firebirds Monsters game. The owner was ejected from the game, if you actually watched it. So, but there's a lot going on with there. But I mean, these were hard fought, close games. So really good stuff. So a championship game's coming up this Saturday. They show the games on Vice, and they also do it on YouTube. So I'd highly recommend if you want to see some high scoring. I think it's going to be a really high scoring affair in the AF1.
Yeah. That I was hoping for an Arsenal win, but either way, it was such a good game. They just got off to a slow start, and by the time they tried to catch up, and they did try to catch up, they were just too far behind. But it was awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really good football.
Yeah.
And so there's other indoor leagues that were going on, and so I think we have the TAL also had its semifinals. Or we can do the indoor football league. We'll do the indoor football league. It had its quarterfinals. So they kind of divided up. They have the East and they have the West. So if you look at the graphic on here, everyone, the 2 Sunday games out West was the Arizona Rattlers upset the defending champs, the Las Vegas Nighthawks, which was a really kind of a shocker and stuff. But it was, for me, it brought a lot of nostalgia because I remember growing up as a kid in the 90s, seeing the Danny White coach, the Arizona Rattlers, when the Arena League started. And so that was a good game. You had the team that a lot of people think might win the whole thing, the San Diego Strike Force, beat the Tucson Sugar Skulls. I was really hoping for the upset, but it didn't happen. And then back east, the team that's really rolling and doing so well is the Green Bay Blizzards. They had a shootout, another high-scoring 73-59 game against Orlando Pirates. You know, Pookie Williams, former UFLer, going out there and trying to do his best. And on Saturday, you had the Tulsa Oilers go in and beat the Jacksonville Sharks. And this is Tulsa's won 10 straight games, and they are coached by Marvin Jones, who's a great Florida State alum, former New York Jet. So it's really setting up a good showdown. This weekend is their semifinal. So the Oilers are going to the Blizzards, and Arizona gets to go to San Diego, which isn't too far of a trip. So again, great semifinals, good action coming up in the Indoor Football League. Really exciting stuff. I'm repping the Chupacabras, who didn't, win the game, but my kids love the word Chupacabra, so I got a Chupacabra jersey from New Mexico. So we're repping the Indoor Football League tonight.
Love it. Yeah, I'm thinking the way the Oilers are rolling, they might go all the way of it. But Green Bay is actually kind of known for their defense, so they might be able to stop them. We'll see.
It is, and that's going to probably be the game to watch. It's that Oilers Blizzard game.
Yeah.
And they get great fan turnout out there. So that's what's great about the IFL games. They really kind of sell out, and they fill up the arenas, and they do a great job marketing and everything.
Yeah.
And the other indoor football league that we have out there is the TAL, or the Arena League, which has a kind of a Midwestern flavor. And so you had, again, its semifinals. And I like the Arkansas Diamonds defeated the Monroe Greenheads out of Monroe, Louisiana. This was kind of like a DC Defenders Orlando Storm thing, because they played the week before. So they played back-to-back, the end of the regular season and then in the playoffs. But Monroe was unfortunately lost in both of them. And so the Diamonds are going to go up north to the suburbs of Kansas City to the St. Joseph to take on St. Joseph Goats, who defeated the Nebraska Siege, who they beat 2 weeks earlier in the second-to-last game of the regular season. And the Goats went out there and they beat them again. And the Goats defeated in the first game of the season the Arkansas Diamonds. So they began the season together, and now they're going to end the season together. So that should be a really competitive game, and it's going to be super exciting stuff. Who knows? Maybe the Kelsey brothers will show up. Their company is a minority owner in the Goats, so everyone's in Missouri is really excited to see if they'll show up or not. Who knows? But it is I really like the TAL. They have throw-offs. There's no kicking allowed. Everybody's got to go for one or go for two. And it's kind of a really fun, kind of fast and furious. And it's only 7 on 7 instead of 8 on 8, like some of the other indoor arena leagues. But yeah, this is going to be a good one. This is the one I'm going to make sure I get to watch, is their championship game this Saturday in Arena Mania 3. It's kind of like that wrestling spirit like tomorrow night show's going to have. So tune in tomorrow night and on Saturday at Arena Mania 3.
I love it. That's cool.
Now, in Europe, there's 2 leagues there, and there's civil war between the owners and everything of that nature. So there's the European Football Alliance, which this upcoming week is the last week of their regular season, week 13. So this was week 12. And you had some teams that keep rolling. Nordic Storm rolled all over the Frankfurt Galaxy, which had fallen apart. There's a whole lot of drama there. Their quarterback, mutual parting of the ways. They brought in another quarterback. He didn't have enough time. He's a good athlete, but he was not able to step it up. And then the Munich Ravens are undefeated. They got Russell Tarver, former North Carolina quarterback. Poor Jack Del Rio, and the Paris Musketeers are really still the best uniform in Europe, but they are struggling on the field, and they're really struggling. Meanwhile, in the Alps, the Raiders Tyrol have just all of a sudden they got a new quarterback. Kenyatta Allen's his name, kind of a all-around great athlete, and he's really letting them on fire. They scored 61 2 weeks ago, and they scored 41 this week against the Prague Lions, and so knocked them out of the playoffs. So Tyrol, if they win and they upset Paris, they're in the playoffs. They're able to make that Big Four, as they call it. So it's going to be an exciting weekend. And then, of course, there's the showdown, the rematch between the Ravens and the Storm in Copenhagen, where the only loss was on that last second. They missed a field goal. So it's going to be an exciting game. That's the Saturday morning game, which is at 6 a.m. here on the East Coast. So if you want to get up at 4 a.m., Royce, and watch some West Coast football, European football. But it's on delay, so they do it on YouTube. So really watch the EFA games because they're kind of fun. And it's good stuff.
And if you are a helmet fan, I do love the Musketeers, but that Storm helmet is awesome too. It's kind of almost like a reverse New Orleans Breakers look, where it's got a black shell with a blue wave. It's really cool.
Yes. And one of the things that I want to drop about this is a lot of these teams have lost some of their starters because they've come to the U.S. to start college football. A lot of those 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds I was talking about, especially because the NCAA has done a new eligibility thing. Some of the gentlemen that were going to go to like prep schools and stuff, they've enrolled in community colleges or in D3 and D2 schools because now their eligibility is kicked in. and they're not going to get a waiver or anything of that nature. So like the top receiver for the Prague Lions, he's in college in the U.S. The defensive end that was going to go to from the Nordic Storm, he's at the College of the Canyons in Southern California so they are down people. So it's interesting how their season's continuing, but they're losing their young talent to the U.S. colleges, which is a great opportunity for those kids to come over and play here in the U.S.
It is, and I wonder, like 5 years ago, before the whole college people getting paid thing, would they have even been eligible since they were pro players? I wonder, but
now the NCAA is not going to say anything about that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be exciting to see. I mean, I'm looking forward to maybe in a few years seeing some of these guys in the UFL, seeing them in the indoor leagues. I mean, hopefully a lot of them, they make it to the NFL or the CFL. But I think we're going to see an influx of European players coming into the American professional leagues who have pro experience and college experience.
Absolutely. That's cool.
Now, in the other European league, the last one, the AFLE, which has a lot of, unfortunately, some lopsided scores. They had no really close games. You had the Paris Lights come out and beat the Frenzy, which is out of Florence, Italy. They beat them. The Rhine Fire, like the Vienna Vikings, who had a bye week, are just rolling. The Berlin Thunder are dealing with all their off-the-field financial issues, and I think that's affecting the players. And I've heard about that through the grapevine. There's some people I know over there. And London is getting stronger, and they beat them, and they're probably going to get that fourth playoff spot. But they have about 3 games left in that league. They have a 12-game season before they get to their 14 playoff. And so they got some good games here. The Panthers are going to go up against the Vienna Vikings. We'll see what happens there. Paris and London will probably be a good matchup. Berlin and Rhine are in a rematch, and they had a close game. So we have some good games. 3 of the 4 games are going to be pretty good. And, yeah, I think there's a lot of talent there. They just have to work on some stability in that league. And it's got a lot of potential, but it has a lot of issues that they got to deal with. But the football is good when it's good. But when it's not good, it's got some struggles.
It kind of depends on the matchup because there is a little bit of lack of parity because they have some really strong teams and then some really bummer teams. So it's kind of good when you get to see like Paris matchup with the Italy Florence team because they're a little more aligned. But boy, when like Paris hit the Ryan team, it was brutal. So it's interesting to see just the really strong teams like Vikings and the Fire are just so dominant. It's hard for the other teams to compete.
It is, and they've got to work on their parity, their building up, and just being able to attract and retain talent, and especially local talent. But they're working on that.
Cool. I love it. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. Good job on the recaps. That's good.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and kind of talk about some CFL action. Our friends up north in Canada, they are kind of a little over halfway through their season. They're going strong. They've got one team. The Ottawa Red Blacks just lost their coach because they have had a terrible season so far. So they kind of are trying something new midway through the season. But overall, the CFL is going strong right now, and it's really fun to watch. However, their quarterbacks are having massive injury issues. So there's a lot of backup quarterbacks in right now, which is kind of fun to watch because we're getting to see some people who we haven't seen before step up. But then again, like the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they signed Harrison Frost, who was on the Battlehawks last season, and he failed to step up. Sadly, he was terrible on the Battlehawks and has been in his one outing with the Ticats, terrible for them too. So unfortunate for the Tiger Cats. But here's the standings. You can kind of see who's good. And then overall, the East is pretty much the Alouettes, but the West is wide open. So the Lions actually started off slow, but they got a win last week. So I think they're hopefully going to kind of bounce back. There's some just fun watching football up there, really fast pass heavy game. And then if you're a DC Defenders UFL fan, you might recognize Derek Roberson is now on the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, and he got a sack this last week, which was pretty awesome to see. So I encourage anybody out there, check out the CFL. It's good stuff. And that's going to lead us right into some of these player movements that we've seen in the UFL, where we saw Harrison Frost and Derek Roberson go up to the CFL. And So they're playing in the CFL right now. There have been a few others, but those are the bigger names that you'll probably recognize. And one had a bad game, one had a good game. So it's kind of fitting. And now we're going to move on to talk about all the other player movement that's happening in the from UFL to NFL. And the biggest name, I believe, is Cam Gill, who was the all defensive player of the year. He was on the Kings, edge guy, and he is probably going to be awesome for the Panthers in Carolina. Another Carolina signing was Keon Byers. So the Panthers, I believe, have done the most signings, if I'm not mistaken. So they're smart in picking up these UFL premier guys. So it's kind of cool to see that.
They're like the Detroit Lions were last year signing guys left and right.
Yeah, and the Lions have done some this year too. They started out signing 3 wide receivers off the bat. They did since drop Tariq Black, but they're still looking at people too. So that's the other piece is I'm going to show you a bunch of guys who have been signed, but there have been dozens and dozens of tryouts. So it's cool to see these guys getting a shot at it at least. And once they try out for one team, I think other teams take interest. So a lot of times you'll see one guy get a tryout, and then the next week he'll get another one, and eventually sometimes we'll get actual signings. So that's pretty cool. I'm not sure if we have some others there that we can show. Like here we go, Bradley Ashmore. Now he went up to the CFL from the Battlehawks on the Stampeders. And then we had Alex Cook, the safety for the Stallions. He moved over to the Rams. You might remember him from his one-handed interception that he had because he had the other in a cast. So he picked the ball off with one hand this season. It was pretty awesome. So he's on the Rams. That was a cool signing by them. And I believe we've got Hudson Clark too coming up. Hudson Clark was a Stallion, another Stallion safety. So 2 Stallion safeties in a row got signed to the NFL. Hudson went to the Titans, and he has actually subsequently been released. So that's kind of a bummer, but they did sign, you'll see here in a minute, they signed another UFL guy in his place. But the other guy here, Caden Prather, is now on the Packers. A couple years ago, he was on the Bills and didn't quite make it for them, then played for the UFL, got his chance to get back into the NFL. That kind of story, I love to see it. So that's pretty cool to see him back in the league. And then we've got Quentin Newsome. He was a cornerback for the Gamblers, is now on the Cardinals. So it's going to be interesting to see, and Mike's going to talk about it a little bit later, where some of these guys from Birmingham and Houston end up. Do they go to the NFL? Do they go to the CFL? Do they go to a different UFL team, or who knows? But we'll talk about that later. DJ Miller, this one I'm really excited about because he was one of my favorite defensive backs in the UFL, and he's going to my younger brother Aaron's favorite team, the Buffalo Bills. So I'm excited for him because I know that he's an up-and-comer. If you saw him for the Michigan Panthers a couple of years ago, he got a great start for them, and then last year another good season for the Aviators. So it was a good signing by them. We also had Cam Camper from the Storm go to the Jets, receiver. And then here's Mario Goodrich. He's the guy that kind of took the defensive back spot from Hudson Clark there. So teammate took a teammate spot on the Titans. That was interesting to see. And then we have Travis Bell, who was awesome key linchpin frontline defensive tackle for the Kings, go over to the Browns. And that's probably coming up here on the next slide. But that was a big signing by the Browns because I know that they are probably going to, I think, use his heft. Like Travis Bell is a big dude, as you can see by this picture. He can definitely clog the middle. So I'm hoping he makes the team. And then one of my favorite guys, because I'm an Oregon Ducks fan, I live in Oregon. Oregon Duck guy Casey Rogers from the Defenders is moving up northeast to the Patriots. I'm not a big Patriots guy, but I do appreciate the Ducks and Defenders. So he's in the NFL, so it's cool.
It's funny about him is he also played pro lacrosse before he played for the Defenders.
Huh.
So
wow.
He played for the Philadelphia Wings, and so he's played. So he's in his 3rd professional league.
That's crazy. That's cool. Love it. There are some cards that I do not have because they just signed today. We had wide receivers Rock Taylor and Elijah Cooks from the Aviators and Stallions, respectively. They signed with the Panthers today. And then Edge, Garrett Nelson, who a couple years ago played with the Brahmas, signed with the Seahawks today. So I'll be putting out cards of those. You can watch my channel on X or Facebook to see those cards as I put them out. And another note, I think I may have already talked about it. Hudson Clark and Tariq Black, who had signed with the NFL, have already been waived. And then one last note on that is that the Hall of Fame game coming up on Thursday between the Panthers and Cardinals includes 5 UFL players: Cam Gill, Keon Bars, Quentin Newsom, Rock Taylor, and Elijah Cooks. So it's pretty cool. We're going to be able to hopefully see these 5 guys play. And since it's a Hall of Fame game, they do play the guys that have a chance to make the team a lot more. We might actually see them playing in Canton up there. All right.
Great job on the cards, Royce.
Thank you. One last note on player movement is that we saw some retirements happen for a lot of names you'll recognize if you're a long-term spring football guy. Chris Odom, Breland Speaks, Noah Johnson, Noah Henderson, and Nate McCrary have all retired this offseason. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I was both a Chris Odom and Breland Speaks super fan. I love those guys. So it's kind of sad to see them retire, but at the same time, they had been in the league for a while, in the spring leagues for quite a long time. And, it's just a bittersweet to see him go because I'll miss him. But now I'm going to pass it over to Mike because Mike G's got some UFL stuff to talk about.
Well, before we jump into that, I just want to talk briefly about some of the players you're talking about and some of the leagues that we're following. Like Kevontae Turpin started playing in Europe and then kept it going, playing in different indoor leagues and worked his way to the UFL and eventually to Dallas. And so that's why we keep an eye on some of these leagues, because your favorite players in college may not make it to the big league. So they have to start from the ground up. And that means playing in Europe, playing in indoor games and watching them and following them. Just like Roberson, he's in the UFL, now he's in the CFL. And I really think he's got the potential to continue that run and make it into the NFL following the CFL season, if not sooner. So it's very interesting, and it's awesome to follow these guys on their paths. And if you're a football diehard like we are, it's just great football. It's good to see it. It keeps football going year round for us, and that's the dream. But we're going to talk about the latest UFL news. Mike Rapoli once again issued a tweet ordering the death and demise of 2 franchises in the UFL. We've heard extensively about Birmingham. What we know is that decision was made at least 2 days prior, before it was announced. AJ McCarron went on Coach JB's show, and he said, they told us 2 days before that this was going down. They're not staying in Alabama. They're moving, and AJ McCarron is going to stay with that franchise. And then we're finding out the venue and all the auxiliary costs of having a game and putting on the production of a game. It was being covered by Birmingham, the city of Birmingham, and Protective Stadium was allegedly free. We still haven't gotten 100% confirmation. We know that in the USFL days, they were being charged $100,000 for the facility. And somewhere in that, it was negotiated. They were getting it for free, but we don't have anything official on that. So it's a little bit of speculation, but that's neither here nor there because none of that changes. Mike Rapoli has shown if the venue does not look full, he's not going to put it on TV. It doesn't matter whether it's free. It doesn't matter if there's fans there who are really enthusiastic. If there's not enough butts in seats, he doesn't want the product. He doesn't want to be seen on TV. And you can ask the fans in Michigan and San Antonio. Great venues, great fans, but the venue was too big and it didn't look good on TV. And it's unfortunate that it had to go that way. It just goes to show you that no team is safe. I know there's some talk right now in St. Louis of the Battlehawks moving out of the Battle Dome into Energizer Park. And some of the fans are in an uproar over that, and they're extremely upset. But that leads me to Houston. And I don't think Houston is getting enough love and attention for what they built in Houston. Now, granted, where we are now is way different, but in the XFL 2.0, the Houston Roughnecks, led by PJ Walker and Coach Wade Phillips, was a juggernaut only to have that season unfortunately cut short by COVID. But that was a team that was foundational to the XFL and to what the UFL is today. And I don't think they've gotten enough love and respect. It's very easily kind of like, oh, their attendance was down. They should have moved last year and things of that nature. But if you look at having the Gamblers, the Roughnecks, the Roughneck Gamblers, and now the Gamblers again, it's a lot. I mean, if we're talking about the fans in St. Louis are upset about moving from the Battle Dome to Energizer Park, imagining having to be in a hub, then TDECU, then Rice, finally get a decent home in Shell, only to have the rug pulled out. So people who don't understand about Houston and how their fans are feeling, look at your team. If your team was to move venues, you'd be very upset. Can you imagine having it done 4 times in 4 seasons, losing coaches, swapping out the rosters? It was a lot for the fans. You know, year over year, we've seen a decrease in ticket sales and attendance. But you factor in, you're having to move venues, you're changing rosters, you're changing logos. DeMarcus Colors did a project a couple of years ago, weighing out all 16 teams of the XFL and the USFL and then ranking them based on social media following, attendance if available, and TV ratings. The Gamblers rated the lowest out of all 16 teams. In the modern UFL, we're trying to get TV audiences around about 1 million views as a peak. The Gamblers had 2 games of 200,000 fans watching on TV. So that was an unpopular brand, and that just was, I feel like, the nail in the coffin for this Houston franchise for as far as spring league football goes. Anthony Miller and John Lewis talked about it, and I think it was John Lewis that said that this has basically salted the earth in Houston for indoor spring football for at least a generation. You can't go back to that market because it is so burned. The fans were tired of being, quite frankly, jerked around. You know, Here's your team. Oh, we're changing it. You got to get new gear. You got to throw that gear away. A lot of fans didn't want to go through that, and I don't blame them. I've got a lot of fans that follow me on social media as XFL Mike G, and I've talked to a few. I've been to games in Houston. I've had games in San Antonio where the Houston Roughneck fans have come down. And we've talked, so I've gotten to know them fairly well. But a lot of them are just fed up. And if we had one decent season where nothing changed, you might have started to see that turn around. But unfortunately, they went ahead, pulled the plug, found greener pastures, and they're moving on. But I think it would be discourteous to not remember Houston, the city of Houston, the Roughnecks, and to some extent the Gamblers because of their history and what they've meant to alternative football, and particularly the UFL. And that's just my piece. I wanted to give the fans in Houston a little bit of acknowledgement because it seems to be Birmingham. Guys, any opinions, any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, it was just too muddied. Honestly, the branding was so muddied and back and forth that you can't really expect peripheral fans to understand what's happening. And then the diehards that were showing up were so few that it was just sad that a city the size of that market, which is 4th or 5th biggest in the whole United States, just couldn't, for one, get very much good advertising. And then when they did, the branding was just so muddled by the time you switched it around those 3 or 4 times. And then the stadium moves 3 times. They finally got into a great soccer stadium, but by that point, it was kind of too late. So that's how I feel about it. I think it's probably smart of them to move cities because I think it just it did kind of burn those people out on spring football, which is sad.
I happen to agree. I think Houston's such a great market. I mean, if you look at between Houston and Birmingham, Houston metropolitan area has more people than the state of Alabama. And so, but they're more condensed. It's the size of Connecticut. We've seen the maps put over it. But they kept changing and they kept moving stadiums. It's just what you guys have been talking about. I feel really sad for that city. It had such a great history going back to the 1980s USFL. And 2020 was such a great year. They were undefeated until the shutdown. And it's just like they deserved better. They deserved a better opportunity. But at the same time, the city didn't show up. And like you said, the casuals didn't show up. And in the end, that's what they want is Napoli wants people in the stadiums. It's aesthetics. And so it's a real shame for what happened to Houston. And but you could kind of see it was coming, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then Rock Renegade in the comments has a pretty good point there about there used to be 3 UFL teams just 2 years ago, and now there's down to 1, just the Renegades. So hopefully they stick around. Since the headquarters are there, I think they will, but you never know with the UFL.
And that brings me to a point. There's been people calling for the Dallas Renegades to be moved as well and completely move out of Texas. As far as there only being 1 team left in Texas, there's rumors, and it's more speculation at this point. It's not even rumors. It's more wishful thinking on people's parts that the Gamblers could move to Austin. And that's a possibility. But Houston and Austin are completely different markets. I actually live in Austin. I'm going to do a piece later about some of the teams potentially moving into this area, not just the UFL, but the IFL and the NAL as well. But that's later down the road. I don't know how we feel about getting Houston's sloppy seconds. We prefer a new franchise just because it's not really the team moving, because once we're going to have another dispersal draft. So this roster is going to be all over the place. The only thing we might get from that is Kevin Sumlin. And I think Austin would deserve a little bit better than that. So it's something I'll delve into later down the road. But Houston leaving Texas with only 1 team, that's a big miss, because Texas is a football state. But it takes longer because there are so many levels of football. You do not understand. They're talking about doing NIL deals in Pop Warner. That's where we're at. High school, I'll have indoor practice or covered shaded facilities now. And a lot of these, and the UFL teams were practicing in indoor facilities at high schools in the Arlington area. So that's how serious it is in Texas. But it takes time. It's kind of like, get in line. You got to wait. You got to build it out. And I was personally hoping Rapoli would give it 1 more season and let it grow. But he's shown he is not willing to wait. He's willing to cut bait, find greener pastures, and move on. And it's unfortunate for the city of Houston and the state of Texas, because now we only have one UFL team, and it's all the way in Dallas. But we'll rally behind them and support them.
And you brought up a pretty good point that I want to talk about just a little bit, because I haven't heard whether or not they're going to do a dispersal draft or not. So I'm curious if they keep those teams intact and just move them to a different city, or will they do a dispersal draft? So I don't know if you know something I don't know, but have you heard definitively that they're going to disperse those teams?
I have not heard definitively, but it's typical UFL business. It's off season. Let's jumble up the rosters. We would like some sort of stability in the off season, as opposed to these teams being relocated. But it just matters to reason. If there's going to be a dispersal draft when we have the new franchises start playing. So potentially you could have a player playing on 3 different teams in 4 years. It's not a good look. I think Mike Rapoli needs to hire a football only guy as a commissioner, not John Gruden. All right. At the very least, he should make amends, build back that bridge, and open up his pocketbook and maybe get Skip Holtz back. If he really wants to do the UFL a favor, open up that pocketbook a little bit wider and go talk to Oliver Luck. Now, maybe he's over the XFL thing, hopefully, but he needs to have football people in place. Skip Holtz as a commissioner would be awesome. Oliver Luck as an executive making these decisions, so that it's not all on Mike Rapoli to make these decisions and come up with these solutions, because I really feel he doesn't have the background when it comes to alternative football and spring leagues. He might be a passive fan, but he's not into it like we are. You need diehard fans. Diehard fans are going to support your league. Casual fans will come casually and leave casually if you're not winning. You need to appeal to your diehard fans. Look at your metrics. Look at cities that don't have teams and focus there. But I'm going to try to get off this pedestal. I don't want to turn into one of the shows where we're just complaining all the time. But I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts and any comments from the chat.
Yeah. John, what do you think about it? Do you want to see them disperse those teams or keep them intact?
I agree. I think there needs to be some stability. They blew everything up last year. They need to have that stability. I think the coaches need to push back and say, listen, we need to have stability. The product on the field needs to be better. We don't want to have messy, sloppy football. We don't want to be called a Bush League. We don't want to be called all these sort of things. I know people that watch the UFL and some people that stopped watching the UFL because they just felt like the product on the field wasn't as good as that they'd seen in the past. And some people I know were very critical, and they're like, it's a joker league. And I was like, man, and I defended the league and everything of that nature, talking to these individuals, people that I respect, old coaches that I've worked with over the years. They're like, no, and you can't just have blow up rosters every time. Yeah. You got to keep the rosters. Wherever the gamblers are going to go, they got to go. Take the team with them. Wherever the Stallions are going to go, got to take the team with them. Obviously, they've said they're going to keep Sumlin and AJ McCarron, so you got to have those coaching staffs. Probably those coaches need to some staff changes. Obviously, they've lost some of their assistants to other leagues and the college ranks. But I think that's important. We didn't really talk a lot about it, but I really feel bad for kind of the diehards in Birmingham that lost their team because they had 5 years. They had the Skip Holtz era. I mean, that's the golden era of championship. That's the blueprint. And I really like what you said, Mike, about bring him in as the commissioner. I mean, I secretly would like bring him back in 28 and have him do this all over again in Oklahoma City, have him be the head coach there or something, and bring Mike Nolan back, hopefully with Michigan.
Yeah.
Bring the old guys back and say, hey, make amends. But that you made a great point. Make amends. Bring football people in. Mike Rapoli is a great businessman. He knows what he's doing business-wise, but he needs to know football, and you need football people. And without football people, you're trying to make this very cookie cutter with the soccer stadiums and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's tough because I think may have already burned that bridge, unfortunately, with Skip Holtz. He's probably thinking college again. I hope not, though, because like Mike T-Bell says here in the comments, yeah, he would be an amazing commissioner. He knows the game. He knows the league. He knows the guys. He'd be awesome. But I wonder if keeping those coaches is the smartest thing. We know how McCarron did as a coach. We know how Sumlin was hit and miss. I'll say he did better than I thought he would. Still hit and miss. So it's almost a little, I think they've got the opportunity to cut losses now, even though I think they have 2-year contracts. I would almost say let those contracts just pay them the next year and get new people in who know whatever the new markets are going to be and tie into those new markets. So just some thoughts. I just hate to see any more inconsistencies. And if they do a dispersal draft, I think that's going to be a downer. Like if you look at DC last year, they were the most intact team left as a core, and they made it all the way to the championship. So if you don't have that, you're going to start the season with inconsistency, especially on the O-line, and it's going to look ugly for the first couple of weeks like it did this year. So I'd hate to see another dispersal draft.
Now, going back to some of the comments that you made, they made some announcements about Breland Speaks and Chris Odom retiring. Now, Chris Odom had a tremendous season in the USFL with Gamblers, is Defensive Player of the Year, went to camp with the Browns, broke his foot, and was never the same. When he did heal, he very much should have been invited to participate back in the UFL. But there's this, I don't want to say blackball, I don't want to say, let's just say new criteria for players being brought into the the UFL, with an eye towards young potential guys who are going to make the move up to the NFL. And if you remember, Rapoli at the end of the championship game says, good luck, I don't want to see you again, which I can understand that sentiment. But if you're constantly bringing in new players, you're going to have this league with inconsistent play in it, drop balls, missed assignments, things of that nature. With the truncated 3.5 week training camp, it's very hard to do. And I think it's a disservice to limit the amount of talent, the talent pool, to those younger players with that upside. You want the best professional football players on these teams to give us good football. And some of these players that didn't come back would have greatly improved this league. And I think that's another misstep for Rapoli. He's got this idea of what he wants to do, and he's doing it, again, without football people around him to tell him, hey, you need to bring a guy like Chris Holden back. Braylon Speaks needs to play somewhere. Puka Williams, he could have played. Look at what he did in the IFL. He could have been back. Somebody needs to get a hold of him and say, you can spend your money, but spend it the right way. Going back to Birmingham, this is the last comment that I wanted to make on it. We brought up TV market. Yes, they were the largest TV market, but it also shows that they had the largest confirmed fan base. Why couldn't they get more attendance into that stadium? And it's unfortunate that Birmingham lost their stadium. It was mind shattering, mind blowing. It kind of caught you off guard. But then again, when you look at the facts, and you look at Repolli's statements over the last couple of years, he's given them the opportunity and they have not fulfilled it. They got complacent, and they were like, we're good. We got a winning team. We're the Stallions. Yay. Oh, we're just like everybody else, But That's all I wanted to say on those.
I hope within the next 2 weeks, we see announcements of where they're moving these teams to, because if they wait until late November, December, January, then they're going to be under the gun to be selling tickets and stuff. I just don't want to see that happen. I hope they've already got in names and that kind of thing, copyrights to go through that. I hope they're prepared, I guess is what I'm saying. I hope they just didn't axe teams and light a candle in hope, So yeah, and I agree with Callie what says we need to develop our own stars. I think we've done that in a way, but we do need to continue to do that. So I think you can really do that in each city by keeping those rosters intact. So just a thought there.
I think that's important to develop your stuff. I went back home because I'm from the DC area and was talking to my nephew, and he's talking about Jordan Tamu and Jason Bean and about Matt McCrane, all these guys. Some of them, like Bean's new, but Jordan and McCrane have been there forever. He's 8 years old, and he knows these players because he's watched them the last few years. And he went to the championship game with his dad and everything, and all that. And he talks about it with his teammates on his flag football team and his kids in his elementary school. And they're like learning these names, but you got to keep those names to try to build the interest and build the stuff, because he's being an 8-year-old fan talking about the UFL. He wears his DC Defenders stuff to school when everybody else has got the Commanders gear and the Capitals and stuff. And he's like, hey, I go to this, and this is what my dad and my uncle like to do and what we do. And you got the long-term stability of the league. You've got to have get the best players you can say, like Mike said. You got to have the best players you can get and then keep them there and get the best coaches you can get. I like the idea of you've always got the money. If you don't want Sumlin and McCarron, buy them out. Yeah. And get coaches that know how to coach, because for every, Anthony Beck and Chris Redmond who know what they're doing, they've had a lot of guys they've tried who didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's very good conversation. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, so let me ask you that along those lines, how do you feel about older players playing? Or do you think Repolli's onto something with these younger players trying to fast track them to the NFL? What is your personal preference?
For me, I want the best player. If he's 21 or 31, it doesn't matter. Like the starting Conley, the starting corner, is 31 years old for the DC Defenders. He played in the NFL, all right? But that time had passed for him, but he still had enough juice in him to keep playing in the UFL. Still was faster than most people, even if he wasn't as fast as the 22-year-old, 23-year-olds coming out of the SEC and the ACC and the Big Ten. But he still can play.
Yeah,
give him an opportunity and a place to play.
Yeah, and if you've got guys like a kicker, Matt Coughlin had one of the best, if not, right there with Bates that year as far as the most prolific field goal kickers as far as percentage goes. Why wasn't he around this year? Like, he should have been in the league. Boogie Roberts should have been in the league. Breland Speaks. Those guys that proved they were at the top of their game should have been welcomed back with open arms. And that was sad to see for guys like me who start to latch onto these fans, and especially charismatic guys like Boogie Roberts, who is just such a fun, great dude to follow. And, I think that's the kind of thing that will get people interested in the league and have them stick around in the league, is consistency of getting to know these players, know how they play and their personalities. And if you don't do that and are just looking for the next hit, it reminds me of card rips, when people are just ripping, looking for the only, star in the card pack, instead of looking at every card and saying, "Ooh, that guy's good too," So I hope that it just doesn't become a throwaway league like that, where they're just throwing players away every year. So.
Yeah, and it's not like these players are getting a chance to really get developed. You have 3.5 weeks in training camp, and then you're expected to know and to do things. You don't have a lot of time to teach and to work on techniques. You've got in camp and during one drill, hey, we got to fix this right here, and then go on to the next thing. It's not like we're going to spend 30 minutes after practice doing this and doing that. It's hurry up and catch up. And I think, like I said, it's a bit of a disservice to discount veterans the way that they have. And even though he's a punter, look at Brad Wing. Brad Wing should be playing somewhere.
Yeah.
He would have been a great weapon. But, it's not our league. We can only do so much to support it. And when I've been asking fans to be our own support, to be our own marketing. And I'm not expecting you to raise millions of dollars for a billionaire. What I am expecting you to do is to encourage other fans to become fans with you, so that the game that we love will grow. Because if we don't do it, it's not going to happen on its own. We need to stop saying they need to do something. I look at what the Horns Forward podcast and the My Panther Pride podcast have done did the previous 2 seasons. They had their own events. They had trunk or treat, they had school supply drives, they had food can drives in their community without the sponsorship of the teams. The teams found out and helped them out and sponsored them out, but it's doing things on your own that's going to help. Get together a club, fans to watch the game somewhere. If you're in a fantasy league, tell your other players that you're playing fantasy with about the UFL. That guy played for this team, and this guy played for this team. Or when the NFL season's over, we still got the UFL. There's little things you can do to talk up the UFL, because we're trying to find diehard fans just like us, because diehards are what the game is built on. Casual fans come and go. We need consistent players. We need consistent fans. And that's when I talk about being our own marketing. That's the type of things that we're doing. Creating content, having a podcast. Those are the things that we can do. They're not going to put money in Mike Napoli's wallet, but they're going to help have a league that we can all enjoy. And that's all I wanted to say on that piece.
Yeah, I think there's a balance, because you do have to have advertising behind it too. Otherwise, you're going to have nobody that knows what you're talking about as far as a football team. And I've heard so many stories about people that live in Birmingham or Houston or, Michigan, that didn't know they even had a team. I was in the Detroit airport, and I went in the airport shop and said, "Hey, do you have any Panthers?" And the lady there was like, "What's the Panthers?" So that kind of thing is frustrating to me, because that means they're not advertising as a league in those areas too. So I think there's a balance of they need to be pushing some advertising money, as well as diehard fans need to be spreading the word.
Yeah, and the whole marketing piece is another subject altogether, because I know some little bits and pieces here and there. And I'll get into that later. We may do a project on it later, talking about the cost of advertising and the cost to run the league. People don't realize the UFL is not the NFL. Every NFL team gets $400 million just from the TV deal. The UFL, as a total investment between Redbird, Fox, ESPN, and Napoli himself, is probably around 350 million. And that's for the entirety of the league. And that's not just per season. So the UFL is operating on a very small budget. And the largest chunk of that is the players, and that's not a knock on the players. I think they actually deserve more. But a huge chunk of that, $67,000 times 43 on a roster times 8, that starts getting into $8 or $9 million. And the league is operating on about, I'm guesstimating about $35 million per year. So that doesn't leave a lot of money for marketing. They could spend tomorrow's money for marketing today with no guarantee of a return. So I think they're being cautious with that. But That being said, Rapoli does need to focus on that marketing. He needs to focus on the behind the scenes part, building out his staff. He's just now starting to look for positions to fill the back office. That needs to be first before anything else, because if you're building straight, that thing's going to fall. You need to build a base. You need to get the right people in place in these organizations, in the cities. And eventually when you're able to move to these cities, they can take right over. But for now, you've got to make sure you've got enough staff behind the scenes to get some of this work done. And it's not glorious work. It's not glamorous work. It just needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the show, unless you guys have any other topics you want to talk about.
Well, we just had up there the quote from in the chat from Callywood talking about how there's the grassroots. Louisville really jumped in. A lot of those fans, they made podcasts. They did all of that. And I know that Birmingham did that to an extent, but they just couldn't get the fans to come out. I actually talked this evening with a friend of mine who lived in Louisville for all these years. And he brought up the UFL while talking to me. He's like, "Yeah, man, I can't believe Louisville won the championship." No, it was, but he wasn't aware of like the teams being dropped and some of that drama. He's, was a casual fan and seen that, but he doesn't even live in Louisville anymore. But he knew about the Louisville Kings because the word of mouth got out there. People up there. He still has a son that lives up there. So it's like you got to get the word of mouth. In the end, you got to show up at the games. All the markets have got to show up. If you don't show up, they've shown they're going to escort you out.
And I think city politics play a part too. The mayor needs to back it like he did in Louisville, and they need to kind of push that from a local media perspective. I know St. Louis has done that quite a bit there too. Like they cover the Battlehawks. They don't have an NFL team to cover, which helps, but I think that kind of thing helps bring the peripheral fan in and get their eyes on it to start with, and then once they see the football, it's great football. So that's what I'm hoping happens in the next two cities that they end up with.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be engagement prior to these teams officially being announced. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when's our next show? I don't want to close up too soon, but if we're ready to go, are we going on the 18th, 2 weeks from today?
Yeah, we are. And I was actually getting ready to segue into this, but I'll let you go ahead and introduce it. Or if Rick, if he wants to make an appearance from behind the curtain, Rick, is he there? Okay, so I'll talk.
Rage.
I'll talk about it. So, Alternative Football Panel, one of our partners or panelists, our producer actually, there he is. And I knew he was going to do that. The Rickard of Oz. Tomorrow on the same channel. If you're seeing this podcast, it'll be available on the same platforms tomorrow, Wednesday, August 5th at 10 p.m., same exact time. We're going to talk about WWF and the XFL version 1.0 and relive some history, have some fun. I'll probably jump in if I can. It's a great conversation. I know if everybody loves the XFL like I do, even though you USFL guys like to talk smack about the XFL, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for both of those leagues. So join us tomorrow for that discussion. Rick, if you wanted to jump in and do a little advertising here, a little plug for yourself.
Yeah, we're going to have some wrestling creators as well, and with football, so it's kind of a mix of everything. So you'll get some wrestling perspective. You'll get some people with some football perspective. So it's kind of a good conversation because, that was the league that started it all. And started, everyone coming back, and and then you also had the ESPN 30 for 30 on the XL, which sprung another round of spring football. So, hate to say it, but that 2001 league did a lot for spring football more than we think of.
Yeah, that's cool.
Orlando.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Jeff Brom, this is Am I Alive? That's the best quote ever.
That is.
Play football. Rey Mysterio.
All right, gentlemen. Royce, I'll leave it up to you to wrap it up and send us home.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate it. We love talking football, all different leagues that are happening right now. Football is still going strong, everybody. So get your TVs, tune into some football, and enjoy it. And we'll see you tomorrow night for the WFL XFL show, or WF Wrestling. We're talking wrestling and XFL. And then 2 weeks from now, we're talking more spring alt football. Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Bye all.